everyone, welcome back to Champion the Passion, a weekly pro wrestling podcast where we inspire you to champion your passions and celebrate the joy in what you love. I'm your host, my name is Victoria Daisy, and today we're going to be recapping everything that happened last night on AEW Dynamite, the go home show before All in Texas this Saturday. But before we dive deeper, don't forget to leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed. Follow me at It's Victoria Daisy across all social platforms and follow Champion the Passion across all streaming platforms. But let's dive right into the opening segment. It was for the AEW Women's World Championship match. It was a face-to-face, the final one before All In. We had Mercedes Moné and obviously our champion Toni Storm. So Mercedes came out and did not want to waste time. So she immediately called up Toni. Toni eventually came out, and then Mercedes made a toast to herself in true Mercedes fashion. But Toni was not having any bit of it. And, she was saying some very clever things that I was very blown away by. Toni Storm is one of the greatest of all time. And I know that so many people might either agree or disagree with that, but I really believe that. Not, sometimes people are saying, the greatest of all time have to be champions 1,000 times, right? And sometimes I believe that's true in some cases, but in some cases I honestly don't, because the work that she does is so underrated. And I know even though people praise her, it still feels underrated because I don't think people understand the severity of her. People don't understand how many layers there are to her character and the little clever things that she says and the way she never breaks kayfabe. Those are all things that just show a true pro. And those are things that set you up for being a GOAT. And so, I just think that she is absolutely amazing, and her storytelling, and I just think she's absolutely amazing. I mean, her storytelling is next level, and there's truly nobody like timeless Toni Storm. And, Mercedes said while they have walked similar paths, they will never be anything alike because Mercedes will always be better than her. And, Toni accused Mercedes of hiding behind all of these titles because she's scared. But Mercedes said she's not scared of anyone or anything. This is her destiny. Then Toni said that Mercedes deserves all the titles in the world except for the AEW Women's World Championship. Then Toni said that she will go down in history as the one who could never win the big one. And then, Mercedes got mad. They broke out into a brawl. But that's what really leads me to believe, what if there's a big chance Toni Storm does retain this title? I think AEW has the perfect opportunity, and I'll talk more about this tomorrow during my bonus episode where we will preview everything happening at All In, but I'll touch a little bit on it right now, that, AEW and Tony Khan has this opportunity to really ring in a new season of AEW. If we can have Hangman win and be the new champion, if we have Mercedes win and be a new champion, if you have Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland win and now they're the new EVPs, you can have this brand new era of All Elite Wrestling. But at the same time, I don't know if they'll actually do that. I feel very firm that Hangman will win, but I don't think that the Young Bucks are going to lose this match. And when it comes to this match, I mean, they have the opportunity to create one of the greatest women's stories of all time. I know this storyline has already been amazing, but I think they have the opportunity to make it even better. You guys know Mercedes is my GOAT. I've never shut up about that. And of course I want her to win this title, and I'll probably cry if she does out of excitement. But if what Toni said is true, where she can collect every piece of gold except for the big one, that can fuel her after losing this match to go on a huge year-long chase, even maybe all the way up until next year at All In, to then go on, the chase for the big one and have this insane, maybe they even have a series of matches, but just an insane storyline. We saw a fantastic storyline between Toni Storm and Mariah May over the last 8 months, and that was probably the best women's story that All Elite Wrestling has ever produced. But I think they have an opportunity right in front of them with two of their biggest stars to do not just that, but something bigger. And I really hope that they, obviously the outcomes for that match are probably already determined by this point, But, hopefully that's a thought that has run through their brains. I think that would be so amazing. Obviously it sucks to see Mercedes lose because I want her to win, but it's almost like a Cody Rhodes situation. Like she will win the big one. It's just there has to be a bigger story built up to it because right now Mercedes is winning left and right, and I have no issue with that. But it's almost seeming a little too easy for her. She just won the CMLL women's or the World Women's Championship a couple weeks ago at Grand Slam Mexico. So it's like she's winning them easily, and I think for once we need to see her get to a point where she is just like willing to give it all up for this one title. I don't want it to come super easy, but at the same time, AEW All In is probably going to be the biggest show of the weekend. They are going to be at Globe Life Field in I believe it's Arlington, Texas. And that's where the Texas Rangers play. And so, huge baseball field stadium. And, they have sold an insane amount of tickets. I don't remember exactly how much, but I do know it's more than all three WWE shows in the weekend combined, which is crazy. I think Evolution has only sold 4,800 tickets. Saturday night's main event has maybe 9,000. Actually, that's a lie. It might be a little less. And then the Great American Bash is like 600 tickets. So, all of that combined is still less than what All In has been producing with ticket sales. And so, with having the most eyes on them that weekend, and, this is their WrestleMania, basically. This is their Super Bowl, the biggest show of the year. And, I would love to see them have a great moment like that with Mercedes where she wins that big one. But at the same time, I kind of would love the chase for her. I think that would be a really fun story, but I feel like this is really 50-50. I feel like they want us to believe that it's a clean sweep for Mercedes, but part of me feels like it won't be. And I think either way, I'll be happy just knowing like I know Mercedes is going to win that title one way or another. It's just a matter of when. So enough of me rambling about that. Let's move on into the first match of the night. We had a tag team match between Bandito and Brody King versus Konosuke Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher. Now, this was a great match, okay? I am such a fan of everybody in this match. I mean, it was literally high fly mania out there because everyone was flying around all over the place. And, I think the person that surprised me the most was Brody King. I have always enjoyed him in the ring, but last night he was seriously doing some crazy stuff and I loved every second of it. I mean, it like Brody is one of those dudes that you wouldn't expect to fly because of how large he is, and he really did his big one and I absolutely loved it. But let's move on to the next match. We had Ricochet versus Blake Christian. Surprisingly, this was a really fun match. When I saw Blake Christian again, I was like, oh my God, here we go. I kind of started chuckling a little bit. I can't lie. And, it was definitely more storyline driven than the other matches, but that's kind of the fun part of it. And, they had a great back and forth going on for a while. And, the entire match was overall just so enjoyable. But in the end, Ricochet did pull out that W. And then after we had our talky talk segment between MJF and Mark Briscoe. Now, this was one of the most unserious segments in a while for the most unserious people. Am I right? MJF was mocking all the Texans in the house and, he said he spoke yeehaw language so that hopefully it would get it through their thick skulls, which I was like, dang, like you are going all in, no pun intended. But like, we know MJF. Why are we surprised? We know how he is. And honestly, I was cackling the entire time. I think MJF is so funny. And, he was saying the most out of pocket stuff. And I was gagged by some of the stuff he was saying. Like, he eventually, and I'll get to this in a second, he just was swinging really low. And, Mark Briscoe responded by saying that he believes that MJF needs a country whooping. And then MJF, swung extremely low with things by, talking about Jay Briscoe, which is Mark's late brother. And, rightfully so, Mark crashed out. I think I would too. And then the Hurt Syndicate came out. We all know how much I love the Hurt Syndicate. So they came out to, beat up Mark Briscoe, and then Jet Speed came out for the save and wiped the floor clean with the Hurt Syndicate. Excuse me. I was actually shocked, and I loved getting to see this vicious hungry vengeance side of Jet Speed. I really loved that. And then the patriarchy came out to continue destroying the Hurt Syndicate and adding more pressure for their match upcoming. And, I loved the ending to this segment. I thought it was really awesome. Then we headed into a fatal four-way match to determine who would hold the number 2 spot in the women's casino gauntlet match at All in Texas. We had Megan Bain versus Tekla versus Queen Aminata versus Ty Mello, excuse me. And this was a fantastic match. I thought every single woman did an absolutely fantastic job and they all worked so well together. But to be honest, I think the standout for me was Megan Bain. She was wildly impressive. Every time she steps in that ring, I mean, she just freaking tears the house down. And my favorite to win this was Ty Mello. I really wanted her to win, but unfortunately she didn't. But she did so good, and so did Queen Aminata and Tekla. I thought everyone just did a phenomenal job, and I definitely want to rewatch that match because it was so good. But in the end, Megan Bain did take that W and now holds the number 2 spot in the women's casino gauntlet match happening at All in Texas this Saturday, alongside Chris Statlander, who holds the number 1 spot. Then after that, we had a match between Samoa Joe and Wheeler Yuta. Now, this was a good match, and you guys know, if you've been listening to my podcast for any amount of time, you guys know my strong dislike for Roxanne Perez. And I would say that my AEW equivalent is Wheeler Yuta. That man breathes and I'm already annoyed. I hate to sound like a negative Nancy, but for years I have just never liked this man. I don't know why. I don't know. It's just like everything about him I don't like. Kind of like Roxanne. Like there's just nothing about her I like. There's nothing about Yuta that I like. I don't know. For years I've always had a thing. I just don't like Wheeler Yuta. And, this match was low key torture, but at least Samoa Joe was in there for gits and shiggles. And you know what? He came out with the W. So that's all that matters. Then our main event was the All-Star 8-man tag team match. We had the Young Bucks and the Death Riders versus the Ops, Will Ospreay and Hangman Adam Page. This was a freaking dream match. So many incredible talents all colliding for this literal epic dream match. The best way I could describe this was that it was a pay-per-view caliber match. I mean, this is something that could have happened at All In. I mean, it was out of this world. And, they were all doing these insane move sequences and spots that made this match all that it was. But in the end, my goats, the Young Bucks and the Death Riders, took the W. And after the match, pure chaos unfolded when the Death Riders viciously attacked Will and Hangman with weapons. But then Swerve came on the screen because he wanted to show vengeance by destroying the Young Bucks limousine. And, they flipped out, they ran after him, and it was an epic ending to Dynamite. And I loved it so freaking much. I thought this was such a good go home show before All In. I am so hyped for All In. That is definitely the show I'm most excited for this weekend. And AEW pay-per-views are unlike anything. I think, they always have really good weekly shows, but I think their pay-per-views always are 10 out of 10. They always knock it out of the park. And I just have to say, my all-time favorite AEW pay-per-view is, I believe it's the 2023 or 2024 Double or Nothing, the one where MJF returned as the devil. That show was goated to me. I freaking loved that show. And, I think All in Texas this year has the opportunity to steal that number 1 spot for me, low-key. I think the card is extremely stacked, and I cannot wait for tomorrow's bonus episode where we get to recap, or sorry, not recap, we get to preview the entire show, share my predictions. It's going to be so much fun. But let's head into my overall thoughts. As always, phenomenal show by AEW. My match of the night, hands down, was the All-Star 8-man tag match. That was just insane in the best way possible, and I just loved every second of it. Now, there were 2 really great segments last night, but my segment of the night has to go to Mercedes and Tony. I could listen to those 2 yap for days on end, and consistently be entertained. I thought that they did such a great job advancing the storyline and getting me more hyped for their match at All In, and it was just so good. Overall, I'd rate the show about an 8.5 out of 10. Another great show, and again, I cannot wait for All In. Tonight, Thursday, they have a Collision. Usually it's on Saturday, but with All In happening on Saturday, they are moving it to tonight. And I looked at that card. It should be really good, so I'm really excited to watch it as well. But thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this episode of Champion the Passion. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed. Follow me at It's Victoria Daisy across all social platforms and follow Champion the Passion across all streaming platforms. Don't forget to champion your passions and celebrate the joy of what you love. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.